The Diesel Performance podcast contains explicit language.
Thank you for joining us again. This is Paul Wilson.
And this is Chris Hemke.
You're listening to the Diesel Performance podcast. And what a week it has been since our last episode, Chris.
Man, same intro every week. Yes, what a week. This week's a little different than most, I feel, especially with the holidays and stuff like that. The weather change up here in northern Illinois, it changes the tempo a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Also, this is like ramping up for Cyber Monday, Black Friday specials. Yep. So I know all of my dealers have been going nuts with getting all their promotions together and getting everything set up in that world.
Yeah, thanks, dealers.
It's been nice, man. It's been nice. Obviously, we work with a lot of great distributors and online dealers and local shops all throughout the country. So we kind of get an idea of what everybody is into. Right. This year, it seems like guys are going to be able to grab some really good options. Stealth turbos are going to be up. Tuners are going to be up. Tractor tunes are going to be up.
Exergy's doing a nice promo for Black Friday, Cyber Monday.
Yeah.
Talked to Rick and Rob over there, so shout out to those guys.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of Exergy, actually, we're going to jump right into Exergy do's and don'ts.
I didn't even mean to do that. I'm a natural.
A natural transition there. It's rare, but we get them once in a while. All right, I'll kick us off here. So Exergy do's and don'ts. Don't forget to watch for the lock washer when removing the shaft nut on Cummins applications.
That happened to me.
This lock washer can easily fall down to the bottom of the front rear train cover, which would require full disassembly of the front engine for removal.
Yeah, there's about
that happened to you too?
That happened to me.
Yeah, you all the way in?
When I was building my 07 motor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember something about you doing it wrong multiple times. If this washer is dropped down into the gear train cover without knowing, it will cause catastrophic damage to the assembly. Don't fuck it up.
Wow.
Yeah. Chris, hit us with a nice lighthearted do after we just told Cummins guys you might destroy your shit.
I'm just going to get right to it, right? When running a dual or a triple CP3 setup, a high-pressure fuel line from each pump... Right. Run a separate high-pressure fuel line from each pump rail to the distribution block or rail that's recommended.
Yeah.
Right? So, wow, people are really going to think I'm...
Yeah. No, I think we're stumbling over it, but it's a really good point to make here. So,
wow.
You don't run a Y splitter.
No, absolutely not. They're individual high-pressure lines is what they're referring to. You can also contact Exergy for any custom fuel rails that you might need or fuel lines.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, and we have seen some pretty goofy setups in the shop of guys who tried to wing this at home and I saw one guy try to run it in sync or like in parallel where he like fed one line and then fed the other pump.
I haven't seen that.
It was interesting.
I can't even read what's on my paper.
Right.
So I told you guys it's one of those days. So, wow.
Well, speaking of one of those days, Chris, I had somebody who's probably had a little bit rougher of a day.
Right.
Okay. Sergeant First Class Valderrama, or Sergeant V, who's currently stationed in Kandahar Airfield, Afghanistan, shot me a message. Sergeant V, I've been practicing pronouncing your name all fucking afternoon.
I sit next to Paul. I heard it 10 times.
He shot us over an email. He actually shot me an email. We've been emailing back and forth. He's got an 06 Cummins. He's looking at a slight budget adjustment. So his initial goal was that 650, 700 horsepower mark. Now things have changed a little bit for him, and he's trying to do this more in stages. Mm-hmm. So his 06 Cummins already has a built trans, lift pump, intake, exhaust, and 100 horsepower sticks.
Wow.
His next step he's looking at is a Stealth 64, CP3 studs, track bars, and if the budget gets there, some other supporting stuff or some other fun parts. Talking about CP3 and injectors, obviously from Exergy to get him upgraded. He wanted to know, Chris, and I think this will be a good one for you, will my head be safe without studs with a 64 on it, 100 horsepower sticks, stock CP3?
I like to do these, stages, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk like a stock injector, stock injection pump, add a turbo on there, I generally tell guys you're kind of at that cusp, right? Where head studs are the next route to go. If you're going to swap out injectors, always do the head studs.
Right.
Now, he has a stock pump, so that's where the limiting factor is going to be. I don't think that the stock pump's going to supply that much more fuel supply, I guess, to get that 100 horsepower injector to its full capabilities.
Right.
I definitely wouldn't just throw a CP3 on there without doing head studs, and doing the small things like valve springs and push rods. We actually have a truck in the shop right now that has this identical carbon copy setup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really common. And that's why I thought this was such a good one from Sergeant V was like, I've gotten this question 3 times this month, right? With guys who are looking at upgrading to a Cummins Stealth 64 Charger. They want to know, do I have to run head studs? Well, no, you don't have to, but it is going to be your next modification. And we have seen stock power Cummins head gaskets give up.
I mean, you see a lot of things, when guys call into the shop or, you send us a message on the Diesel Performance podcast or, I float around on all the forums on Facebook, this is a frequently asked question, right? And a truck can have a failure at stock power level. The truck can have a failure at 800 horsepower level. It's the luck of the draw. Within reason or what statistics show or what our general experience is a stock head gasket, they talk about, you read the terms like 35 PSI, 40 PSI a boost, yada, yada, yada. Well, that doesn't make much sense because boost out of a stock turbocharger isn't the same as boost out of like an S475.
Right. There's not as much airflow there. So even though they're making the same pressure, we're moving a lot more air with a larger
the
charger.
CFM, the quality of that
There
air.
you go.
So, when you talk about, I'll go off of power, okay? I think 600 horsepower, you're at that cusp. I would not go any further, and I would not be beating on the truck for any great length of time, thinking that it's going to, never fail.
Right, right.
Once you want to turn it up, once you want to get into that 650, 700 horse mark, which, I mean, he's there with everything he's got. He's literally, he's an injection pump and studs, the valve springs, like I said, the little couple dollar parts here, couple dollar parts here that add up. I mean, like I said, I have a mega cab in the shop right now that we're doing a trans build on. 2 years ago, we did the setup, and the truck did just over 700 to the rear tire on 35s.
If he's doing this truck at home, how do you feel about going stud for stud?
That truck, we went stud for stud.
In the shop?
Yeah. My buddy John Flamont truck, we did a podcast with him a couple years back. That truck had 190,000 miles, ran consistent, mid-tens.
Yeah.
And that
big
truck
horsepower.
That truck, stud for stud. I have a couple other buddies, 1,000 horse stud for stud.
Do you know anybody who's gone stud for stud and it went catastrophically wrong?
Unless they did the install wrong? No.
Okay.
But those guys are out there. Like I don't want those guys trolling us like, oh, well, my buddy did this, because not every situation's the same.
Fuck trolls. Let them troll me. Troll me.
It's just,
I'm just playing. Don't
if
troll
the truck's
me.
in good running shape and you can follow a basic set of instructions and you have the mechanical ability to do it. I mean, if it was me, that's what I would do. I've coached some guys through that in the past.
Yeah.
If you have a bad head gasket or that you're having a little bit of an issue, I sure as hell wouldn't do that.
Right.
Pull the head, do it right.
Okay. Okay, good advice. Speaking of good advice, we're hoping to get some today from Mike McHughes from Xi Diesel. How the hell are you, Mike?
I'm good. How about you guys?
Good. Mike, I did not practice pronouncing your name all afternoon. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
You did a good job.
Good. Mike, you are over at Xi Diesel. We're going to ask you a little bit about kind of what you guys do there and what you specialize in. But first, tell us what got you started in diesel performance.
Actually, my start in diesel performance was with Blair, my partner. I worked on a lot of gassers and boats, stuff like that in the past, so I was mechanically inclined. But, I've really only been working on it for about 10 years with him.
Oh, just 10 years, he says.
Just 10 years. I mean, the diesel industry is, the performance where it really boomed over just the last 10 years.
Right.
So you're there in the cusp of it. So.
Okay, cool. Mike, tell us, what do you guys do over there at Xi Diesel?
We do all kinds of stuff. We're mainly like a fab shop and a restoration shop, and our main focus is in military Humvees. And we also work on H1s, and then we do diesel performance on mainly Duramaxes.
Okay.
Oh, very cool.
Humvees, man. What is that like working with those?
It's crazy. They're all weird.
I guess I'm just going to dive into it. Is there a lot of room to work under those hoods? Because, I mean, they're a big, bulky motherfucker. So, tell me about that.
Yeah, you would be shocked at how little room there is.
Okay.
I would say 40% of the size of the truck is fender well.
That's awesome, man. How did you guys get into that?
Yeah. Well, again, Blair has been in the Hummer business since they first started selling them to civilians in 1993.
Okay.
So yeah, he's just been in the business for all this time, and it's not a very big market. So
Gotcha. Nice, small little niche within a niche,
Yeah,
right? You know, specializing in
it
those.
is.
I like it. Okay. Well, over there working with the Humvees and working with military vehicles, my understanding is you have come across a few 6.5s in your life.
Yes, sir, I have plenty of them.
All right. Now, when I think of 6.5, I think of my two-door Tahoe with a 6.5 where I swapped the PMD 3 times. It spent more time on the rack than the road. I put 4 starters in it in 3 months. Like, my 6.5 was a giant piece of shit. And most people I know will also say that their old 6.5 was also an unreliable at the very least. Is this the same 6.5 they've been using in these Humvees for all this time?
No, not at all. It's actually gone through many revisions over the years, and a major difference between the setup in your truck and the setup in the military truck is the military trucks don't have a PMD.
Go figure that one, Paul.
Wait a minute. So I could have just deleted my PMD and it would have worked? God damn it.
Sort of, not really. It's a little more involved than that. The pump has changed from a Standardine DS2 in the military trucks, or DB2 in the military trucks, and it's a DS4 in the civilian and in the civilian truck.
What the hell does that mean?
I'm sorry?
What does that mean? What is that?
The DB2 is fully mechanical. The DS4 is a mechanical pump, just like the DB2, with electronic controls.
So it's essentially like a VE pump in the 12-valve world versus a VP44 in the 24-valve world, in a sense.
Exactly.
Boom. See? Schooled you,
Okay.
Paul.
Okay.
There you
One
go.
of us gets it. No, I get it. I got you. Okay. So they've upgraded the pump in them, and that seems to be one of the big differences. Do they still feel as slow as my old 6.5 felt?
Oh, yeah, they're slow as hell.
I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. You know, yeah, they fucking suck. They're slow. So what is it about the platform? I mean, because I do Craigslisting here and there. I see the Hummers for sale. Legendary 6.5 liter is usually in the tag. Like, what is it about that engine that GM just can't shake it?
Well, GM did shake it, actually, completely shook it in 2001 when the Duramax came out. At that point, there were no more 6.5s than anything civilian.
Okay.
And then the plant, the actual engine plant, got turned over to AM General and became GEP. And they still make that engine almost strictly for marine and military applications.
Okay. So what kind of improvements were made for the fact for them to still use that motor in the Hummers?
Yeah, they've gone through many improvements. The major ones, though, were when they went to the optimizer, and then the latest major revision is called a P400. And basically, they just kept adding material to the block because of the early webbing cracks. They improved coolant passages because of the overheating. And then the P400 actually got the major changes. That's the current engine that goes in the military Humvees.
Tell me about the P400.
The P400 is still the same exact architecture, but it is almost completely redesigned. It uses like a completely different kind of material in the block. They went to a mains girdle. It's got a fully forged rotating assembly and balance. Let's see, what else did they do to it? They set it up for intercooling.
Turbocharger change at all?
About it. I'm sorry?
Did the turbocharger change at all?
Yes, the turbocharger has changed incrementally over the years. But yes, it is a new turbocharger. It's called a GM7 turbo that's on the new models.
Now, with the engine code that you were giving us, what kind of power output does the new 6.5 make?
It's 250 horsepower and 550 torque.
Man, I was assuming 400 horsepower, man. I was like, 400, I got this.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yeah, these motors are very agricultural. They're like tractor engines. They really were never designed to make power. They were designed to be economical to make, economical to run. They were really built for fuel economy more than anything.
Do you think that's what their advantage is over like a common rail for their application? Or is there another reason that they're still using this kind of basically mechanical injection setup on a military truck instead of going to common rail?
Well, I don't know for sure, but I have a few theories as to why.
Sure.
It's easier to harden the electronics for the mechanical pump to things like EMP and ozone and things the truck would see in a battlefield.
Okay.
And the other big thing, I think, is that they can't make the common rail engines fast enough. That was one of the reasons why the 6.5 was picked in the first place and why it continues to this day, because the factory can pump out more engines than anybody else, and they can keep up with wartime demand.
I'm
No
sure.
shit.
I'm sure the simplicity aspect plays a huge role, like he was saying. I mean, think about middle of nowhere. You're going to have a computer and all this to kind of get you up and going. One interference with an electronic communication, and it's done. It's not going to run.
Well, this is actually one of the exact topics I talked to Gale Banks about with his L5 PLMM hybrid going into the JLTVs. Is like, well, why haven't they been putting common rails in it? And to be honest with you, he said almost the exact same stuff. It's like, well, they would have to retrain their entire workforce. And if like you think about how many military mechanics are out there that are in wartime or in a situation where like shit breaks, it needs to be fixed now. You start retraining these guys, and then it's a shit show.
Exactly.
So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's
to me.
a really good point, too. Yeah.
Absolutely. Hey, real quick, guys, I just wanted to bring up one of the other sponsors of the show here. Of course, we had Exergy at the top, but we also have WC Fab.
Wehrli.
We've had Jason on the show. We've had his brother Ryan on the show. Next 2 weeks from now, so the week after Thanksgiving,
The next 2 weeks.
you're actually going to hear Tyler Franzen, the shop manager over at WC Fab, on the show with a new budget build episode. One of the things that they do really, really well over there, probably better than I'd say anybody else, is their S400 stocker twin turbo kits. Here at Duramax Tuner, we've been selling their kits forever, literally the whole time that they've had them. They're an amazing kit. I've run, I don't know, a couple dozen trucks with those kits in them myself. It is one of the best driving setups I've ever felt.
I mean, depending on power level and, depending on the use of the truck, it's hard to beat. It is hard to beat what you get for your investment.
Absolutely. And I think that's why they're becoming one of the most popular upgrades for diesel daily drivers and tow rigs, is because they're so practical. You still have that low end throttle response, but you have all of this top end power. And we've talked a ton about twin kits in general on the show here throughout the last 2 years now, Chris. But one of the things I thought was really interesting about Jason's kit specifically, they're TIG welded, they're built in-house, it's high flow piping with all the necessary boots, clamps, and hardwares, and powder coat to that finish of your choice. Hundreds of color options.
Like I'm thinking twin turbo kit, traction bars, combo, powder coat them the same, right?
Black with gold flake. Yes,
Dude,
sir.
That's a hot color. That's a hot color.
Of course, if you're going to be looking for twin turbo kits, there's a lot of other accessories and there's a lot of other parts that you're going to need. There might even be some stuff that we don't carry over here at Duramax Tuner. For all of those other parts, we would strongly suggest taking a look at Alligator Performance, our other sponsor here for the show. The guys at Alligator are literally experts. When you call there, you're working with an enthusiast who has lived this situation, who has been through this, who has had this truck.
Has a truck that you might have or, you had. I mean, they experience it day in and day out.
Absolutely correct. Also, keep an eye out for them for their Cyber Monday, Black Friday specials.
It's going to be big, guys. Take a look. There's a
is.
lot that they have brewing up right now.
Absolutely. So check them out. There's tons of deals that they're going to have going on this weekend. One of the largest selections in diesel performance parts. Seriously, man, buy from an enthusiast. Give a call over to Alligator Performance. Okay, so we're back here. Sorry, Mike, just had to pay the bills real quick. We really do love those guys. But, okay, so you said there have been a bunch of iterations. You had mentioned the Optimizer, and now I believe it was the P400. Did I catch that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Were those the only two major revisions when they renamed them?
Yeah, there was a major revision from the early 6.2s to then the 6.5 power plant that was then that's when they decided to turbocharge it. And so then they had normally aspirated and turbo 6.5s, and then later on, many years later, we're talking 12 years in between or something like that.
Okay, wow.
They started the Optimizer program.
What was
and then
the
that developed
Optimizer
into the
program?
P400. The Optimizer came along, first of all, because they were having all kinds of cylinder head and cracking in the crank in the main bearing caps and cracking in the cylinder heads. So they changed all of the coolant passages. The rear airflow in a Hummer is terrible. You know how they look really wide and kind of flat?
Yeah.
There's not much frontal area, so the cooling is terrible on them. So anyway, they improved the cooling system, and then they went to a girdle system for the main caps instead of the individual mains.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're really trying to bolt these things together at this point. I like it. I've heard a lot of guys.
Yeah, they are trying to hold them together for sure.
I've heard a lot of guys poke at the 6.5 and call it a converted 350, which is pretty honest if you look at the architecture.
Yeah, but it's not. It's actually, that's a myth. It's not at all. It was bottom up, redesigned as a diesel.
Really?
Chevrolet just does this really cool thing where all the bell housing patterns, all the torque converter patterns, and all the motor mount patterns through all the trucks are exactly the same. So this motor, they designed it so it could just plop in where a 350 was, real nice and easy. But it was never based on the 350.
No shit. Myth.
Yeah, it's a completely
busted.
different architecture.
I think we got our title. I did not know that, man. Anytime you hear the 6.2, 6.5, that's what it's always. That's the first thing that's brought up. It's just a converted gasoline engine.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
That's impressive.
It's
So I guess, you guys see a lot of these, Hummers and, with the 6.5s. Do you get people that come to you and say, hey, I want more performance. I want more out of this. And if so, what's the route that you go? Like, how do you
modify a
there?
6.5? Yeah.
What do you do?
Yes, we have people come in wanting to get more performance out of their Hummers all the time, and I almost always tell them no. No, there are a few small things you can do and retain reliability. There's a marine version of the pump that's got increased passages and higher pressure. There's a marine version of the injectors, which are just old mechanical pop-off injectors. And that's about it. I mean, and then you can go up one size on the turbo. But really, that's about it. Intercooling, you can do intercooling, but it doesn't seem to help a whole lot. They're just not performance engines. They shouldn't be treated like ones, and that's where they completely come apart.
So then what do you do when a guy comes to you and says, listen, I want to make 600 horsepower. I want the Hummer. What option do you give him?
Put a Duramax in it.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, now we're talking.
Which you guys have done.
Yes, I actually have one on my rack right now.
Oh, wow.
So Chris, I think even a little bit before you had joined Duramax Tuner, Blair and Mike had shipped us up this Humvee.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about that truck, would you?
Oh, yeah, sure. That was the first one Blair had done, actually before me. And it wasn't put together quite as good as we wanted it to be, but it worked. And that's actually the exact same truck that's on my rack right now that I'm completely redoing it.
Lucky you.
And I think it's going to go back to you guys.
You're absolutely correct. Yeah, so the truck's coming back up to us in January. We're going to do a bunch of great video around it. Radio Rich over here, our producer, is going to help us out with cutting some video for it. I'm really excited. Chris loves the title Radio Rich, by the way, because our listeners can't see Rich glaring at me when I say it.
Yeah, he just gave you the bird.
But no, we are really excited for that truck. So when it came to us last, it had a stock turbo, built trans, Allison 6-speed LBZ, stuffed into a bare bones Humvee. And when I say bare bones, Chris, I mean there was nothing in it. Like it was the Humvee show. It was all aluminum body, rag top. You could bend the doors because it's just like a wire frame with canvas on it. It's like you could bend the doors with 2 fingers. Like you could just bend the framing in it. Like then it would. Like I drove it all the time because when it was here, I was like, oh hell yeah, I'm gonna drive this Humvee around. But I would never push the water off the top after it rained.
Oh no!
So I would turn, and then all the water would splash into that crease in the door and just fall on my lap, and I'd get out, and it looked like I just pissed all over myself.
And you're excited to have it back up here.
I'm so excited.
Awesome.
So excited. Tell us about the rims and tires that they run on Humvees.
The rims and tires. There's been a bunch of versions of those too. The latest ones are 24 bolt. They're 3-piece wheels, 16.5-inch diameter, and they run 37 1250 either Baja or Wrangler MTs.
Dude, they just look fucking mean.
Yeah,
honestly, we put that same rim and tire package on our Apache.
Yep.
And it does not matter what's going on with the vehicle. You see that rim and tire, and you're like,
it means business.
this thing's fucking rocking, man. It is. It looks
they
aggressive.
look pretty badass.
But yeah. So we had it up here with those rims and tires on it. Got to take it down the drag strip. Ran some 13. I want to say Bob claims he ran a 13.5 in it. I know I ran a 13.9. And then I broke it.
Well, Bob's a better driver than you.
Probably true.
Bob's
but,
better than you at everything.
At the drag strip. Okay. But yeah, and then I broke it. And then the day we got back from the drag strip, Blair calls me, "Hey, Paul, I'm going to have a truck over there at like 2 o'clock to pick up the Humvee. It's ready to roll, right?" And I'm like, yeah, man, I was going to call you. I kind of broke your shit. Like, I snapped some bolts off the CV shaft. And
What's funny is I'm surprised you broke it and it wasn't Bob.
I know.
That's nuts.
I know. He beat on it, and then I got the broken pass.
There you go. There you
go.
go.
But yeah, that was literally. It's got to be in my top 3 all-time favorite diesel trucks that I've ever driven.
So this might end up being like the top one. What's it coming back here for?
Ooh.
What are we doing?
Tell us about the restoration project, Mike.
Well, I completely frame off it. I completely stripped it back down to the frame. I rebuilt everything. It's got all new seals. I painted the frame, painted the body, painted the undercarriage, painted the engine. So it's got all fresh rubber, fresh brakes, fresh half shafts. And then I think we're going to put a 6-point cage in it. And we're going to put actually some harnesses and, decent seats in it. You guys are sending us a turbo for it, so it's going to have a hot rod turbo. Yeah, other than that, it's going to be pretty much the same. I think we're going to leave it rag top and.
No kidding.
Stealth 64 VVT on that bitch, so she's just going to be whistling down the track.
Wow, that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't see Hummers every day, and then you see one with a Duramax. Now you just at 1%, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, that's my thing is like when they first told me like, hey, there's a Hummer coming, in my head I just thought H2, and I was like, kind of lame, like whatever.
Right.
I was the one who bitched about the seats the most because I drove it. Right. And like Blair actually told me yesterday, what I drove was actually the upgraded Humvee seats.
No.
Dude, they were boxes. Like they were boxes with cloth around them. Like they were awful. And no radio hookup. So like I would drive this truck when it was here, I'd drive it 35, 45 minutes to go to a car show with it.
Right. I saw it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I'd pull into the car show and I'd get out and like literally could just hear my back going like, oh, it was so uncomfortable, but
and those
so much
have
fun.
to have the stuff. I mean, it's a high dollar vehicle, right? At the end of the day,
they're not
it's
cheap.
not a luxurious vehicle, but you're buying what it is, right? You know, you don't see them.
No, exactly. It's unique. I would say, and let me know when you guys get this thing together and back if you run into the same problem. Everywhere I went in that truck, everybody wanted to know what I got for fuel mileage.
Seriously?
Which is, like I would literally just start laughing. I'd tell them 8. I get 8.
Yeah, that's the number one question I get in them.
Like, who the fuck cares what I get in it? Like I have a Humvee.
How did you get it? Why is it on the street? Why do you have a Duramax in it? Hey, what kind of fuel economy do you get, man? That's what I want to know.
Like, what are you thinking about getting this for your family ride next week? You need to make sure that it's going to fit into your budget. Like, get out of here. Yeah. No, man, that thing is such a blast. I can't wait to see it. Okay, back on 6.5s because we did want to get you on here to talk about 6.5s. Tell me a little bit about the injector setup in the 6.5s because they're not the same as like what we see in the Bosch common rail system.
No, not at all. It's the whole system's made by Stanadyne, and it's like I said, it's a DB2 mechanical pump. So it's an old rotor style mechanical pump. They used the same pump on the Fords at that time too, and then like I said, mechanical pop off injectors. The injectors are not direct injection; they're indirect injection. There's actually a pre-combustion chamber that the glow plug and the injector sit inside of.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's really about it. It's really a very simple system, and they're obviously they're mechanical cable throttle. And that's it. And the system also has a mechanical lift pump in it that makes about 3 psi.
It's so wild to hear the stats on this stuff because it's so far from what we deal with on a daily basis. Even the small stuff or even VP trucks, like it's just so different than what they're still putting in 6.5s. It's wild to hear that they're even still making them. Do you guys have any preference? Like, would you prefer to work on a Humvee 6.5 or like an LB7 Duramax?
I really don't have much of a preference, to be honest with you. The 6.5 in the Humvee, you could fix it with like a Phillips head screwdriver and a hammer, So it's kind of nice to work on those because they're not sensitive. The Duramax is a little more finicky.
Sure.
There's more moving parts. There's more complexity, to the setup, which, again, kind of touch on. That's why these engines are still being used in military,
Applications.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
So simple mechanical. They're waterproof. They're completely sealed. The electronics on them. It only takes 2 wires to start a 6.5.
Wait, back up there. Did you say it's waterproof? Like, you mean you can just drive in the rain, or you mean like you can submerge your 6.5?
No, yeah, a Humvee with what's called a deep fording kit on it. You can basically drive it in over your head where you need a snorkel. Yeah, the wiring is all completely sealed up, and like I said, there's hardly any electronics going to the engine. All you need is a fuel shutoff solenoid and the starter, and the thing will run. So there's very, very little electronics, and if you look through a Humvee, an original Humvee, everything's got these really awesome sealed aluminum Amphenol connectors and cannon plugs and stuff like that. No water can penetrate into the system. And here's something else neat about the deep fording system on a Humvee. It'll actually reroute crankcase pressure into a venting system that then positively pressurizes the hubs and the diffs and the transmission and transfer case so that water can't come in.
What?
Yeah.
I think I heard that I need a 6.5 Humvee. This is
trying to go off-roading.
This is finally it. Dude, I got a 4-minute drive to work. What happens if Marengo floods under 6 feet of water and I have to help people?
I mean, the entrance of Greenlee, that happens once a year.
Yeah, we really do get about 3 feet of water before, in the road coming into work.
Well, there you go. You got to have one.
Got to have one. Company vehicle. Need
Guess
it.
we need to start saving our pennies.
Mike, I definitely appreciate you joining us today and getting on the show and talking with us about the 6.5s. I know I've definitely learned a couple of things I never knew about them.
Yeah, a lot I didn't know. I know not to buy one.
Right. Still not a great performance application,
No.
but it sounds like there's a reason why they're still alive.
Yeah, they're simplistic.
Yeah, there's definitely a reason why they're still alive. They're not performance engines.
That's so great, man. Thank you so much. Is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to today?
Oh, man, no, I don't think so.
Fuck y'all.
That's the best shout out ever.
That's awesome.
Well, guys, thanks so much for listening. I'm Paul Wilson.
And I'm Chris Emke.
Have a great night.
Calibrated Power Solutions, the leading North American developer of clean diesel power and home of DuramaxTuner.com, is the proud sponsor of the Diesel Performance podcast. Calibrated Power develops emissions-equipped calibrations for a wide variety of diesel powertrains, including the Duramax, Cummins, Jeep, John Deere, and many more. For more information and the best customer service in the industry, check out calibratedpower.com or call 815-568-7920. That's 815-568-7920. If you'd like to contact the Diesel Performance Podcast, send us a message through Facebook or email paul@duramaxtuner.com or Chris at CEHMKE@duramaxtuner.com. You can also reach him by phone. Chris's extension is 2121, Paul's is 2122.
Yes, we have people come in wanting to get more performance out of their Hummers all the time, and I almost always tell them no.